The best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. It's Monday, 14th of September. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Rough, Hugh McDonald and Alison McConnell are here with me. Don't forget, you can like, share and follow us on our Facebook channel, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you to the thousands and thousands of people who are joining the football family. We are truly indebted to you. Thank you for that. We've got football to talk about, lots of burning issues over the weekend in the Scottish Premiership. A wee look at the English Premiership, and of course we'll mention our friend Neymar as well, because he's in hot water too. So lots to talk about. I'm going to start with a positive note, because a news story that's just emerged is from, of course, Brian Laudrup. And he's just been given the all clear from cancer after 10 years with follicular lymphoma that he was diagnosed with 10 years ago. And now that is absolutely magnificent news, Roughie, at a time when, you know, we seem to be totally engulfed by bad news. That's a great one for the Rangers legend.
Yeah, it's absolutely super. I'm sure all the Rangers fans will be happy with that bit of news, a bit of legend at the club. I didn't know he had anything going on with him, but no, it's fantastic news. Any person getting that kind of news, it must be such a relief to not only him but his family as well.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant news. You know, the Beatles are split up, Roughie. I'm just checking with you.
Have they?
At the moment. Okay. Yeah, they've gone. It's gone. It's all over. Okay. Hi to Robert Monroe. Hi to Watty Ross as well. Niall, thank you very much for joining us. Darren Fields is out there in New York City. Darren, we absolutely love the fact that you tune into us on a regular basis, and also to Brian Roberts as well as with us. There's so many people join us on Facebook. Pat Burns from Wexford in Ireland. Have you been to Wexford, Hugh McDonald?
I have indeed. I've been to the White's Hotel in Wexford, Peter, where this was so long ago, I got my first proper prawn salad there. And I thought prawn salads were what you got in the Bernay Inn in Rio Stakis, came along.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
this guy just came with this thing that I had to attack with spoons and it was terrible scenes, Peter. It was terrible scenes with live prawns and all that. Is actually a bit traumatised by it, Peter. But Wexford's a wonderful place. Wonderful place.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because as soon as you started saying I got my first, Alison's face went a pale white, and I thought to myself, here we go. I can always gauge the level of this programme by Alison's face regarding any kind of topic that I feel is taking us down a road where we really don't want to go. Hi to Alec Mullen as well, Stephen Martin, Jim Lennon joins us, Lindsay Storier, Gordon Bruce as well, Gogs. Fantastic to have you with us on the programme. Hope you're fit and well. There's lots of people that we know. Gary Adam is a regular from Ohio. And so I take no criticism from anybody in mentioning all these people, because it's fantastic that you join us on the programme. And Will Fowler says, I'm watching from St Mary's in the Isle of Scilly. Opinions on the challenge on Morelos, he says. Don't worry about that, Will. We are on it, believe me. Okay, so first of all, positive note, as well as Laudrup clear of cancer, which is great. We have to pay tribute to Rangers 4-0, 7 clean sheets, 7 Premier League games. Hugh, it's no mean feat.
Absolutely, and it was the Achilles heel for Rangers so often last season. People were looking at them saying they weren't too creative at times, and they certainly had problems last season at times breaking teams down, but there was that. So they had to address that before going forward. So I think Rangers have been really impressive this season domestically. And I'm looking forward to the end, for the season to continue. Although I do think that this COVID thing is getting slightly worrying, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely. I got someone who come on our YouTube channel, Oxygen Teeth, I think he was. He's not happy that when we obviously give updates on the COVID situation, but COVID goes hand in hand with football because it has an effect on them. So if you're hacked off with it, you're going to be mightily disappointed because for the last 6 months we've been talking about it and we will continue to talk about it because it has a major effect on football. First of all, not only is it 4-0 and it was a good performance by Rangers on the day, but Steven Gerrard was obviously talking about the performance of his team and, first and foremost, the tackle on Alfredo Morelos. Was it worthy of a red card for Ryan Edwards?
In terms of the tackle, I've got nothing to say on it. Kevin's made the decision. He's had a better view of it than me. I've seen it again after the game. I think Kevin, once he sees it, will be probably disappointed in the decision. But that's life. We get on with it.
Yeah, well, I'll give you my thoughts on it, Alison. I thought it was a red card. I thought it was a bad challenge on him. Now, Steven Gerrard went on to say that if that had been Alfredo Morelos making that challenge, all hell would have let loose. People would have been calling for a red card, and there would have been all sorts of furore. That's subjective. I tend to agree with the Rangers manager on that. Sometimes I think, when Morelos is involved in something, we're all over him like a rash. Do you think it was a red card?
I agree with you to the first point. I do think it was a red card. I thought it was rash. I thought it was poorly timed, and I thought it could have done significant damage. I think when you see it back and you look at it in slow motion, I thought it could well have been a red card. I don't really agree that Alfredo Morelos is always it always gets it harder than anyone else, to be honest. I think if you look back at the record, he's got away scot-free with a few things too. In big games and big occasions, and I know now there's a bit of a circus around him wherever he goes, and to an extent I take it, but I think we can accept it was a poor challenge without having to go into any other things round about it.
Yeah, he's never too far away from controversy, although I enjoyed a tweet this weekend, Roughie, which, I think a lot of people are having a sweep now on which club will be linked with a move for Morelos. The latest of them that I looked at on Twitter and raised a smile was Holby City are ready to make a bid for him as well. So clearly he's attracting all attention from everywhere.
Yeah, but I would expect to be really worried when they seen him going down. There'd be millions flashing through their mind how bad that injury was going to be. I'm going to disagree to a certain extent. I don't think it was a lunge. I don't think it was studs up. I don't think it was a challenge for 10 yards. It was a challenge that the follow through caught him, and unfortunately, I thought he got the ball. He had every right to go for the ball, and I just think his follow through leg, unfortunately, got the player himself, and it's a sore one. But these things happen in football. You see guys getting sent off because they come sliding in with their food, and we can see that they're dangerous. I thought this was a follow through. I don't think there was any intention at all to harm him at all. That's just my opinion.
Well, listen, we're not going to knock you for it, Roughie. That's the great thing about this programme. You've got your opinion. I disagree with you. Alison disagrees with you. I wonder, Hugh, if the panel will have a look at it and come back to us and announce something before either the end of today or tomorrow morning on Ryan Edwards in trouble for this one.
Yeah, I was interested in watching today Declan Gallagher, the English referee, saying that he didn't think there was anything to look at here, move on. He took Roughie's view that it was just, he came in and it slid off the ball and he went up. I don't tend to agree with that, but I think it's interesting if a guy who refereed at the highest level in England did it. But who knows, Peter? I mean, the fact of the matter for me is, yes, I think it was a red card. But I've been mystified by decisions before, not only decisions that have come out, but decisions where they've actually asked to look at things that I don't think should be worth looking at.
Yeah, okay, we'll get a right split in the camp here, which is great. I love it when we all disagree with each other. I think if Steven Smith's got a great line, he says, if Morelos had done that, he'd be facing the electric chair. I take Alison's point, Hugh, that there are certain other issues that he's managed to get away with because he's such a controversial character. But I'm still sticking by what the Rangers manager said only on this point. If Morelos had been guilty of that challenge, I think there would have been a different reaction.
Well, there would have been a different reaction in that it's a Rangers player doing it. I mean, if it's a Celtic player, the media interest would be the same as well, because we tend to be, rightly or wrongly, more interested in what Celtic and Rangers players do. I thought Steven Gerrard was really cute. You know, he says, I don't want to say anything about the referee, but then goes on to say that the referee got it wrong, basically, because, you know, he makes a point where he says, you know, the referee will be disappointed when he sees it again. And then he makes a point about his player as well. So, yeah, nice bit of press from Steven, but I don't think I think, you know, as Alison said, that there's been occasions where Morelos has walked away from situations where, you know, certainly other clubs felt that he should have been punished as well. But in this instance, I'll stick to red card. But who knows if it'll be looked at again, and if so, what will happen? Because I gave up on that a long time ago, Peter, trying to understand how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And manager in cute statement storm. Yes, that's a regular thing that we see. Anyway, you can have your opinions about it. You know, I think it was a red card. Roughie doesn't think it was a red card. I think Hugh and Alison are in our camp as well. What about other injuries? Because I'll tell you, Rangers might need to go into the transfer market, because the manager's admitted there's a few that he's worried about.
Really pleased with the results and the clean sheet. Thought it was a strong performance all round. We had to adapt because obviously the injuries haven't helped us. But credit to the players, they adapted well. We're hoping Leon's going to be okay. I think that was just a precaution, a little bit of tightness in the quad. Alfredo has got a gash on his knee, but should pull through, should be okay. And we'll analyse Barker and Jack's injuries through a MRI scan in the coming days.
Yeah, they've been linked with Daniel Johnson of Preston, Ali. Preston have got a little bit, I think, antsy about the whole thing. They've been releasing a statement today saying, we don't often talk about transfer speculation, but there's been no bids as yet. So if there's no bids, then why bother even releasing a press statement on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? But what I would say is, I think Rangers have set the tone so far. I think they've come out the traps. They've impressed in these opening months and weeks of the campaign. But where it really comes to the fore is when you have any depth in your squad, when you're playing a two-pronged attack on both European and domestic football, and you're trying to cope with the rigours of suspensions and injuries, and that's when you need a fairly robust squad. And I think, although it can be bloated if you look at the numbers, I still wouldn't be convinced that he would have the requisite quality to go through the entirety of the campaign. So I would agree. I think he probably would want at least one or two more in before the window closes next month.
Yeah, got a few fans talking about whether Rangers have a problem with Kevin Clancy. I don't think so. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really want to go down referees, conspiracy theories, all that guff, because quite simply, referees make mistakes. They call it as they see it. And I don't think there's any agendas on it, and I don't think we should go down that conspiracy theory route just yet. Let's hang on till December and January when the whole country goes completely and utterly nuts, when their team's either not at the top of the league or at the top or at the bottom end of it as well. As far as Dundee United are concerned, Roughie, what did you make of Dundee United?
Yeah.
I thought they would have put up a better fight, but was it the case of Rangers who just steamrolled them?
No, I think the Dundee United manager has to have a relook at the way he wants to play the game against the bigger teams. It's okay saying, yeah, we're not going to go there and sit in. We're going to go and make a go of it. And we've saw 9 times out of 10 when teams do that against Rangers and Celtic, they end up losing 4 and 5 goals. And then you've got to be really sure that your players can recover for that kind of beating. You know, that's 4 against Kilmarnock, 4 against Rangers. You don't want to be starting off the season like that. So I think he might, against the other sides, probably go for it, but not against the bigger sides. I think he'll be sort of reassessing his approach to these games.
Yeah, well, Mickey Mellon himself after the game offered his thoughts on his team's performance.
Listen, I'll look at the game I'll go back and look at the game. The most disappointing thing is that we've lost 4 goals. There's bits of the play that we need to be better with the football, and then we need to show probably that wee bit more belief at times when we do get the opportunities and we get into dangerous areas. We need to be better with the ball.
Okay, Dundee United fans, what do you make of your team's performance? Are you worried about games against the likes of Rangers and Celtic when really the other games is where you'll try and earn your bread and butter? Give us your thoughts on that. I'm going to say hi to John, who says, I'm in sunny Barrhead. I love the show. I watch it every day. And it keeps me going in this unsettling life just now. Keep up the great work. Thank you, John. A lovely message in Barrhead, a fantastic place, Roughie. I've had more than a few late night parties in Barrhead. I'm just going back the way, Roughie, and remembering some right good nights I've had out there.
Yeah. No, I have to say Barrhead's not a place I used to frequent unless it was for football, but no nights out for me in Barrhead, I'm afraid.
No, okay. I must be well travelled, Roughie, to be perfectly honest with you. Although I have to say, Hugh, I thought it was magnificent that Roughie made it out for the filming yesterday in Edinburgh. We were all around Edinburgh City, and of course, not only some historic sites, but Roughie decided not to have a rough night the night before, which was fantastic commitment, Hugh.
But it's as if I've just nipped out to do the bins there because I'm in all. I thought at one point Roughie there, when I was listening, I can hear a bit better now. I thought Roughie there was on some kind of horse tranquilizer for a minute, and I thought he usually keeps that to the weekend, Peter. He doesn't really do that when he's on the show. If the question, I think it was about Dundee United, I think it was interesting what Steven Gerrard said I think it was interesting what Steven Gerrard said on after the match, where he really praised Dundee United for playing, but admitted that it kind of suited Rangers. And that's not really what you want to hear as a manager, that, you take the pat in the back for being enterprising. There's a reason why a lot of teams come to Ibrox and are not enterprising. They'll sit in behind the ball, and that's because it gives them a chance of taking something away for the game. So I agree with Alan that I think Mickey Mellon's got a wee bit of thinking to do when it comes to playing the bigger clubs.
Yeah, and to be fair, Hugh, you cut out at just the wrong time there, because we did mention it wasn't that question. It was just that we were amazed that Roughie made it to our advert filming yesterday in Edinburgh.
Well, that actually ties in with the horse tranquilizer guy, doesn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy with that, Hugh. The mere fact he was there was absolutely sensational. Anyway, thank you very much to so many people who are, of course, calling us, talking about the football, talking about their team. We'll try and give as many a mention as possible across YouTube and across our Facebook as well. So Ross County 0, Celtic 5. It was an impressive performance by Celtic. They were clinical. I thought Ross County played well as well, Alison, even though the scoreline suggests otherwise.
I thought it was a weird game. I would have to confess I only saw the highlights. I was at St Mirren on Saturday, but I thought it looked an odd game, and Celtic come away and you look as though it looks on paper as though it's a very commanding win. But when I saw the highlights back, I thought, my gosh, Ross County had some amount of chances to score. I thought on another day it might have been a far more even encounter. But I think Celtic will take that. They'll be delighted with the goals, delighted for Duffy obviously going in there and getting his debut over and done with, and he definitely looks as though he'll lend some solidity to that back line, and I think too, as we expected and spoke about last week, I think what you'll see now is a 3 at the back and 2 up front, and these 2 wing backs playing certainly domestic football now from Lennon.
Yeah, he always wanted to get to that 3-5-2, just players and injuries kind of thwarted his ambition on it. Again, sometimes, Hugh, and I don't really pay any great consideration to some people from England who try and become shock jocks on any of the players up here. Gary Breen, the latest to past comment and saying that he reckons Shane Duffy could hamper his international career playing up in Scotland. And he said Van Dijk came down to Southampton with a number of, dodgy mistakes that he was making because of his time spent in Scotland. Now, Gary Breen's knowledge of Scottish football, Hugh, could be written on the back of a stamp, and he's just the latest of a few numpties who criticise Scottish football and know nothing about it. And I just get that feeling that Hugh is just caught out with it.
Roughie,
I think
the difference is that when Dyke went down there, possibly not as an unknown, and obviously going down to a level of football that was coming up against better players, and he took time to adapt to that. But I think once he adapted, he was as good as anybody. As far as the Celtic man's concerned, he's done it. He's done the reverse role. He's played against the top players. He's proved that he can play against the top players. So I don't see a problem with him coming up here. I think he is a thorough professional. He's been in the game long enough, and I don't see it as a hindrance at all. He's done everything in the game.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, apart from the fact that most of them think it's a Mickey Mouse league, there is no doubt the quality at times can be in question. We're well aware it's coming out of the biggest downturn this league in many a year, Alison. But there's been more than a few from Scotland who've gone down there and ripped it up. And we've had more than a few who've come up here and said they were going to rip it up and failed miserably.
That's the point I was actually just about to make. How many have we had that have sauntered over the border and looking at the league with some kind of complacency and expecting to come in and be big stars and make a big impact, and it's not worked? I think, listen, to be honest, I wouldn't even give this argument any oxygen by discussing it. I think it's almost like an addition. Come and see what you can say, get it in the spotlight, and if you're successful here, maybe we'll give you a column or some kind of shock jock radio show where you can grab some headlines and get some clickbait for us. I don't think it has any more credence other than that. I think it's said for effect and it's said for reaction, and there is no substance to it. And I think we could pick this argument apart very easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Ali. You're on absolute form today, by the way. That fitness work you've been doing has been magnificent. Doesn't suffer fools gladly. She's belting it out of the park today. Well said, Ali. And the other aspect of this that I think is key to it all is, of course, Shane Duffy only cost Celtic a couple of million. I think Harry Maguire, Hugh, was 80 million.
Yeah. And look at I watched the Spurs yesterday, and looking at some of the stars in their team and the valuations on them, I thought that was a real dismal performance that raised a question mark the size of that cockerel in the top of the stand. It was. I thought that was a really dismal performance from Tottenham Hotspur. Ali's right. It's like I don't get the fake outrage at it as well. Why should I don't want to single out people in the pitch, but why should I really be bothered what Gary Breen thinks about Odsonne Edouard or Alfredo Morelos? Why should I think what Jamie O'Hara thinks of Scottish Premiership? I mean, they're more than entitled to have their views on it. They're more than entitled to try and get a wage out of it. But should we really take it seriously? How many games has Gary Breen sat and watched in Scotland? What is his precise background in coming to that? So I can't really get worked up about it, actually. The proof of the pudding is that 2 Champions League winners in the Liverpool team came from Scotland. Van Dijk, was absolutely nurtured and changed in Scotland, although Southampton helped as well, no doubt about it. And Andrew Robertson went straight to Hull from Scotland, and he's not done too badly either. And by the way, there's other players in Scotland that have went down there and done very well. Stuart Armstrong, another one from Celtic. Stephen Davis left Rangers to go down to Southampton too. He did very well. So I just think, any cursory glance at the evidence, Peter, just renders that argument invalid.
Yeah, thanks to Paul Baird, who's sent us a wee message on Facebook. He says, remember Joey Barton, Mince. Joey was a little bit forthright in his opinion of what he was going to do up here. Listen, a couple other things. I don't know if he did say this, and Vasilis Barkas has said, the way Celtic are playing, they could go unbeaten until the end of the season. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on this one, that might have been translated wrongly, Roughie. The last thing you want is your keeper saying you can go all the way without losing a game.
Yeah, but he's new, and we've seen it before, and we've seen players going to big clubs and putting out statements that they really can't back up, really, because he's not been up here long enough. He would love to think that he's going to go through the game unbeaten, but to get back to that game at Ross County, I'm like Alison. I thought some of the first half, the defence from Celtic was a bit vulnerable. I don't know what's happened to the big boy Julian. He's all over the place, and some of the stuff he was coming up with at the weekend was poor. So no, if they can get that back three all reading each other properly, they'll be much better than that. But I think all good managers will sit back and assess that game. It was 5-0. It was fantastic, all the different scorers. But if you're really analysing it, they need to tighten up at the back, big time.
Yeah, the other thing I think deserves a medal, Hugh, is somehow Celtic have managed to get Bolly Bolingoli out on loan for a year with a view to Istanbul buying him. So I think that as far as PR is concerned on this one, they've managed to come out of it pretty well, because I was waiting on the Ferrari and how they were going to handle, obviously giving him a 2 weeks maximum wage penalty as well. I think they said they gave him the harshest penalty they could, which would have been 2 weeks wages under the PFA agreement with players and various other organisations who look at these situations. He's got the ban, and I thought they were in danger of having to sack him for his misdemeanour, going out for a day and coming back without telling anybody he hadn't quarantined or self-isolated. But they just seem to have suggested, look, let's get him out and get him away.
Well, I mean, Nicky Hammond would have been one of the first things on his list. Get a club for this guy and get a club quickly. We don't know what arrangements Celtic will come to with the club as to wages or who picks up the tab, etc., etc. Talking about tab, I think is Roughie on the tab there.
That's exactly what I was just about to say to you. It's that time again. I could hear the ice, and I'd just like to apologise to all our podcast listeners who are now thinking the ice is in the gin.
I always feel, Peter. I feel really. I've got an apology to make to Roughie, because there's very often in this show I'm talking and I'm interrupting his drinking time, and I really feel I should have been brought up better. But one point about Bolingoli, Peter, is yes, Celtic have got him off the books, but realistically they've got one left back at the moment, and the one left back they've got isn't pulling up trees. The one left back they've got, Greg Taylor. I think Neil Lennon. Well, we know Neil Lennon's looking at bringing in a backup, and I mean he's got till October the 5th to do so. But I think that'll be the next thing on Nicky Hammond's list, is to get another left back in.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there, Hugh. Although I have to say, I have a certain amount of sympathy for Greg Taylor, because if anything, it's probably they're looking at a height issue here, where they want a kind of a taller left back, but he has battled away Alison non-stop to try and improve his game, and his crossing into the box as well, Alison, at times has caused all sorts of chaos in the opposition's defence. I feel a wee bit sorry for Greg Taylor, but I know he may well become the man who has to really battle for his place.
I think he's actually had a decent start to the season, Greg Taylor. I think he's done all right. I think he has improved. But what you would say is, regardless of what kind of form he was in at this stage, you can't afford to go through the season with one recognised left back. So whether or not he's excelling or whether or not he's struggling, I think it's a position that you need at least to have a backup for, and you definitely need to have some competition for.
John Anderson on Facebook says, the panel, Celtic in crisis. John, you couldn't be further from the John, you couldn't be further from the truth. You need to listen to the last 5 minutes. I mean, honestly, talk about taking things out of context. Steve McCarron says, hi, Peter, from sunny Elgin. Great to hear that you're joining us from Elgin as well. Anyway, apart from anything else, Celtic and Rangers, give us your thoughts on the performances, any standouts, players that are really impressing you. We'd love to hear from you on that. It's 2 big wins for both halves of the Old Firm. As far as elsewhere is concerned, one of the most contentious issues, Roughie, was Zlamal coming in from Hearts on loan to St Mirren. I don't think Jim Goodwin was too happy that the game had gone ahead because 2 keepers out through the COVID experience. The third one, on the advice of the medical profession, was take him out of the equation as well. I think St Mirren wanted the game postponed. Did they have a case in your mind?
I think they did have a case, but overall, I think you've got to look at what's coming ahead, and if we start cancelling the game for 2 players, we're never going to get the season finished, because we've already discussed at the beginning of the show that this is just a start. It's going to pop up a lot more, particularly with the teams who haven't been testing. When they start playing, I think it's going to be rife. So, no, it's really unfortunate for them. But they allowed him to bring somebody else in, and then unfortunately for Jim Goodwin, I don't think he played particularly well. So that would be a bugbearer for him. I honestly believes that if he had his first team goalkeeper in there, he might get something out of that game. Who's to say that wouldn't have been the case? But no, I think we've got to... It's a difficult one for the SPFL to start making these decisions. So I think they made the right decision. We keep talking about there's no room for other games. And if we start cancelling games all over the place, then I think we're on a hiding to nothing.
Gordon Ronnie says, what if Celtic or Rangers had no goalkeeper because of COVID and not St Mirren? Do you think the game would have been postponed? I think it would have. That was a disgrace how St Mirren were treated. Goalkeeper met St Mirren players, 90 minutes, 2 hours before kick-off. What a farce, says Gordon Ronnie. And the reason why I mentioned 90 minutes is I think he actually met his teammates at 1:30, which wasn't ideal. Andrew Porteous says, as Tony Fitzpatrick previously recommended, take your medicine. Yes, there's a lot of what I call agendas from what's gone before that will not be forgotten. The last 6 months has been noted down by more than a few, Hugh.
Yeah, and one of the lessons that's not been taken by the last 6 months, and I'm sorry to keep banging on about this, but there is no protocol in place for an early calling of the season at the moment. There's no protocol in place on what happens if the season has to be curtailed in any way. By that I mean, what if there's a sort of interregnum where the season has to be paused and restarted again, and games cannot be, the whole fixture list cannot be fulfilled. What is the criteria for what games should be played and what shouldn't? And the clubs have been warned about this, and the clubs had the chance to kick this ball right into the hands of the SPFL board, and they decided not to, which is that's their right, of course. But it has also left us in Scottish football with no plan or no contingency plan at all for what's going to happen next. And can you imagine it, Peter? It'll be the first time there's ever been a mushroom cloud outside the SPFL buildings in Hampden if this season is curtailed with nothing in place.
Yeah, well, to be perfectly honest with you, I think we've managed to show the way to all countries and how you handle this situation if it was to be curtailed again. Basically, you offer everybody a vote. You allow them basically to have a wee chat on a WhatsApp group together. You think you've got it all in the can, and then a little bit of skullduggery happens, and then we all blame each other for taking sides, and there's an agenda and a conspiracy theory. I think I've summed it all up pretty fairly there, Hugh. Have I missed anything?
Failed to mention that chip that's on the side of Roughie's shoulder, which is like equivalent of it's like a big fish supper on Roughie's shoulder. But Roughie, that's he's on his grave apparently. He's going to put on Alan Rough, Scotland goalkeeper, and then underneath it, but we had a game in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the good thing is, Ruffy, this time around you can carve the vote out, clearly by just enlarging your WhatsApp group, just to make sure you know exactly what everybody's voting.
Yeah, well, I think everybody was doing that. So I don't think that's
No,
an argument. I think everybody.
That boy over there was doing it too. Yeah, brilliant.
No, I would just like to add, if anything happens to the SPFL, hell mend them.
Oh, there you go. And that is the attitude of so many people in Scotland. Aren't we a shining example to everyone of how to handle controversy? Just get their name on the list. It's as simple as that. I love it. It's a scene from Dad's Army all over again. Listen,
Peter,
yeah.
What I was going to say is I agree with you in how myopic the preparations have been for a campaign that is almost certainly going to be disrupted at some point by COVID again. It's shocking that there's nothing in place, but also what I think is, to go back to Jim Goodwin's point, what I also think the SPFL should have done was applied some discretion, spoken to clubs and said, can we come to an agreement that if you have X amount of players who are affected, that you can postpone the game, or in a situation like this where you don't have a recognised goalkeeper, that you can take a postponement. Now, I understand there's not a huge window for games given the campaign, but apparently St Mirren had presented at least 2 or 3 alternative dates where the game could have been played. I think you have to apply a level of common sense, and I think you have to say, at our discretion, when you do not have a recognised goalkeeper to play, it would have been a farce to play the game. They went through a 27-man shortlist. Now, to get Zlamal in, he had to have completed so many tests, so many COVID tests before he could come into the dressing room and play. So immediately when you're going through that shortlist, your accessibility to players was truncated by the testing structure. I think there is not a chance, if this had been going into an Old Firm game, there's not a chance it would have gone ahead. And I feel for them. To be honest, I don't think it would have changed the game. I was there on Saturday. I thought Hibs were excellent. They were very powerful. I think even if Jack Anwick was in goals, I think Hibs would have been too much for St Mirren. But the point of principle, I don't think that game should have been played.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, Alison. But there are no rules, and there are there's no forward thinking in Scottish football, and there is no point in us suggesting that there will be forward thinking and leadership, because the evidence is there from the last 6 months. The only thing I think might be a difference here now, Hugh McDonald, is if we had a second wave and things get shut down, I still think the games will be able to be played behind closed doors if they can offer the assurances in the bubble. That's the difference. 6 months ago, it was unprecedented. Nobody knew what they were doing. But there's been more and more of a collective discussion where they say, right, this is what's got to happen for the games to be played behind closed doors. I don't think there'll be fans. I've maintained that, but I think there's a greater collaboration now and communication and a structure in place that will allow them to play the games. I don't think we would have short term the problem of calling the league before the end of the year. I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think that. Listen, I hope you're right, Peter, but I don't know that you're right. I hope that you're right. And I think one of the things is people talk blithely about bubbles, but unless the players are taken away for the rest of the season and put into hotels, which is what, basically what happened to the US Open, where the players were just told to the tennis, you just stay in your hotel for the whole 2 weeks. Even then, players were coming down with positive COVID tests. I think there is no bubble that I would think that would protect this from entering the mainstream of Scottish football. They've got, and okay, we're going to be very good at spotting it because we're going to have really good testing. But testing in many ways, what you're doing with testing is spotting it after it's happened, and that's why you can get a cluster within a club, that you can get 3 goalkeepers having to be out. I know only 2 were tested positive. Imagine you have, I mean, all these footballers have got, I mean, not all of them, but many of them have got kids going to school. You know, many of them will still be going out and doing what we all do. Like, if they're not going out, obviously they're going and doing shopping. They're into it. Imagine if this goes through a club. Imagine a club comes up and says, "You know what? We've just had 6 positive tests before a major game, whether it be a Rangers Celtic game or a relegation game." I think we'll be very, very lucky to get through this season, Peter. And I think there's a real imperative on the clubs to sit down and say, listen, these are going to have to be the ground rules. This is going to be, is it just suck it up, move on, or is there a limit of 5 positive tests means X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, listen, don't hold your breath on that. That would involve leadership and forward thinking. We haven't seen it. I will stand to be corrected if we get to a point where suddenly the behind closed doors games can't go ahead, and that would be obviously because the medical situation has absolutely shifted where we are at the moment. I hope we can get this season finished as well. If there's another shutdown, says Norman Heaney, Scottish football is doomed. Gary McGurn says, Peter, if there's a second wave, we'll need all the emergency staff, so none of them will be going behind closed doors games. Again, a very good point, Gary. I'm looking at the whole situation, reading up on it constantly. Gary just rightly points out that second wave would put a strain on the NHS, and everybody's had their say on it. So it's going to be interesting. Anyway, Roughie, your old team Hibs, they deserve credit because, again, it was another good win for them.
Yeah, they're the form team, apart from obviously Rangers and Celtic. They're producing the goods. I'm sure the manager will be happy with the new additions. All right, he's a bit fortunate with the first goal, but it's another goal to give him a wee bit of confidence. And the young boy at fullback is playing particularly well. No, so I think I did question, leaving out the bit of quality, leaving out Malin and leaving out Allen, guys who can really turn the game. But the guys that have come in, has been impressive. So, no, he's doing particularly well just now. I don't think he'll have any sleepless nights. I think the whole team is playing very well.
Yeah, Craig Govan makes a very good point. I think I have to highlight this because Roughie has mentioned this, and I think it's something that's going to come home to roost shortly. Craig says, how are the lower league clubs going to survive, Peter, if they're not allowing fans into the grounds? That's why their league start was delayed in the first place. Roughie, I know a number of clubs now, and a growing number, who are wondering how they're going to be able to sustain constant testing of their players if they are going to play in games. I think there's a real problem on the horizon for lower league clubs.
I think, before the season starts, I think you're going to have a problem. I think you're going to have a problem with the Betfred Cup when most of these teams are going to start playing each other. We've seen, the rigorous training things that St Mirren are doing. They're doing everything they can in their power, and they're getting caught out with 2 or 3 players. So what chance of teams in the first division who are doing no testing at all? What's that going to be like when that kicks in? So, yeah, I think it's a worry for everybody. Correct me if I'm wrong, did I see Hearts saying they've been given the go-ahead to play against teams who aren't testing?
Yes, you did.
Friendlies. Can you explain that to me?
Well, they've agreed to play. They've given permission to play friendlies against teams not testing for COVID-19. Basically, I think the 2 teams must not use the same changing rooms. And Hearts are hoping to organise games against League 1 and League 2 sides this month. The logic behind it, I don't know how they've managed to get away with it, but I think that could come a cropper. Is that what you're about to suggest, Roughie?
Yeah, it's okay using the different dressing rooms and entrance to the grounds and everything, but what happens when they go in the park? What happens when they physically start playing a game that is a contact sport and they're going to be scoring goals and cuddling each other? And I just can't understand it. I really can't. I don't think anybody should be playing unless they're doing testing.
Well, don't shout at me, Roughie. I'm just a messenger. I just told you what was happening. To be perfectly honest with you, listen. If I could just relay to you something here, clubs are desperate. Clubs desperately want to play football, and the reason why they're playing these friendlies is because the top flight started. These are the only options for them. But the other aspect of this is quite simply, as I mentioned last week, there is a grinding motion here between the medical advice and financially clubs folding. It's as simple as that. That's why you have every club looking for ways to survive, Hugh.
Absolutely, and it's not from yes, League Two and League One will be in particularly acute difficulties, but it comes from the top down. It comes from there'll not be a chairman or chief executive in Scottish football that doesn't have grave concerns about what's happening at the moment. The plan was, and it was one written in the back of an envelope with a bit of ink and a lot of hope, was that, let's get started behind closed doors. Let's move to, having, trial events, and then move very quickly to having limited attendances, maybe building up to half the stadium, maybe building up to 30,000 at Celtic Park and the same at Ibrox, and maybe 8,000-9,000 at Pittodrie, 10,000 at Hearts, exactly like that in the Scottish vernacular is out the window at the moment. I mean, that's not in the foreseeable future that we're talking about. That's, I would think, miles away yet, and that's creating problems on a daily basis at clubs.
Yeah, and Hugh Scott has just posted a message on Facebook. Says, "Roughie, it'll be okay. Based on last year, Hearts didn't get close to other teams anyway." It's a gag, Roughie. Well done. Well done to Hugh, who's obviously trying to annoy the Hearts fans who watch the programme. Listen, I know sometimes it can be doom and gloom, but it's not doom and gloom up at Pittodrie now, Alison, because quite simply the Dundee Dons are flying, and the hero is a former Rangers player who at times couldn't get a game, and I think, based on his goal again and how Derek McInnes has been waxing lyrical about him, well done, Ross McCrorie.
I know there were a lot of people surprised that Rangers let him go, and I think he's done so well since going up there. I think what you're seeing is a player who's just oozing a bit of confidence. I think you're seeing a manager that's got belief in him, and when you go into the park and play, that manifests itself. There's a real positivity about him. There's a real bit of self-confidence about him, and he started excellently. It's been a phenomenal start for him.
Yeah, Dave Farmer says, "Roughie looks ready to explode. Has he been tested?" Yeah, I mean, listen, Roughie's like a coiled spring at the moment. If you get him on this with a chip in the shoulder and all the things that have been going on, he's ready for a big battle. I can't wait for it. Remember the old days, Hugh, when we used to pick fights with him?
I'm telling you, especially on a Monday when the tranquilizers kind of is weaning off here. It's the worst day to get him. On a Monday's the worst day to get him.
Yeah, Ross McCrorie has been outstanding for Aberdeen. Says Niall.
Yes, I think the guys, the boys been given a chance, to get away from the pressures that brings playing with Rangers, and not getting a game. He's going up with Aberdeen. Obviously, there's no fans in the stadium now, but he's relaxing. You can see he's enjoying his football, and they're getting the benefit of it. And I think it'll be a really good signing. And it might be one of these ones that Rangers might regret further down the years. We've saw it before. They let a player go, and all of a sudden it's maybe worth 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. I think he's a good player, and if he continues on the way he's going, good for Scotland as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you another boy that I'm just looking here and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if Alan Campbell, Ali, could force his way into the thoughts of Steve Clarke, because, he had a great performance and a great goal in the under-21s for Scotland, and then he pops up with a winner for Motherwell against St Johnstone.
He's shone too, hasn't he, in these open weeks? And I think he's 22, if I'm correct. He's not a kid anymore. He's proven that he's there for regular first team football, and why not bring him in? listen, I don't think we're anywhere with the national team that suggests we can afford to overlook anyone who might come in and have something to offer. And I think his performances since the start of this season would certainly suggest that he'll be in Clark's plans.
Yeah, can I just say something to you, Hugh McDonald? Hamilton Accies are now 9th in the table because it was a late show, but they won it, Hugh.
That's right. My reverse psychology is working great. Always tip Hamilton to go down. Always tip them to go out, and they always stay up. You know, I always wonder why Hamilton fans always go mental at me. They should be thanking me for giving the reverse black spots in every year. Good on them. Another great 3 points. See, when we get away from the COVID and some of the controversies, some of which are contrived controversies in the sort of Gary Breen case, there's actually a lot of good football going on at the moment, a lot of interesting football going on at the moment, Peter. The start of next week, next Sunday, we're going to have, genuinely, a top of the table clash. Rangers against Hibs. It's going to be, that everybody in Scottish football be looking forward to that. We've got players coming into teams all throughout the league that are trying to make their name. On the McCrorie thing, I think it's very interesting that Derek McInnes was, and I spoke to somebody who was kind of close to the deal and said Derek McInnes was never off the phone, trying to get that deal over the line. He was desperate to get McCrorie. And see, if you're going to a club where you've been on the periphery, Peter, and you've been trying to impress a manager, and a manager is basically telling you, listen, you get a game every week. If you turn up and play, you're in my first 11. I'm nailing my colours to your mast. That's a great thing for a young player to have, and McCrorie's really reacting well to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stuart Carruthers says he's a class act, Alan Campbell. He gives us drive and grit. So there's a Motherwell fan well happy with it. Let's have a look at the table and see what is happening with your team and where they're positioned in the Premiership table. Rangers at the top, Celtic now 2 games in hand, closing in on Hibernian and Rangers, and they've got that match coming up on Wednesday at New St Mirren Park against St Mirren, so that should be interesting. Bottom half, Motherwell, that win was long overdue, and now you've got a clutch of teams down at the bottom there, all who could, with a win or two, shoot themselves up the table. Who's going to make it into Gabriel Antoniazzi's Team of the Week? Let's have a look and see if you agree with them.
Vasilis Barkas looks at home in a Celtic jersey and made 5 saves to somehow keep a clean sheet in Dingwall. James Tavernier capped his 250th Rangers appearance with a trademark goal, arriving late at the back post. Shane Duffy will be a big player for the Hoops this campaign and started life in Scotland with a headed goal. Carl Munro is only 18, but any experienced player would be delighted with his winning strike on a full debut for the Accies. Stephen Davis controlled the Gers midfield and was rightly man of the match. Alan Campbell was lauded after the game by his manager, and rightly so. It was a fantastic strike from the 22-year-old. Joel Newell looked fantastic in central midfield for Hibs and grabbed a neat goal and assist on Saturday. David Templeton is Aki's star man and earned them 3 points, with both goals down to him. Martin Boyle may have scored with his arm, but he was a thorn in St Mirren's side all game. Odsonne Edouard returned to the Celtic team and he made an instant difference, scoring after just 4 minutes. Scott Wright is coming into his own this season, and although he should have scored, his creative influence shouldn't be downplayed.
Well, he's picked a team there. If I was probably putting one player in that he's missed out, and I would probably have thrown in Ross McCrorie, Alison.
Me too. Yeah. That's the one omission that glared at me too. I'm not sure who you'd have gone in for, but yeah, he'd have been in mine too. And just a word on Joe Newell too. I was at St Mirren on Saturday and I thought he was excellent. He looks like a player, to go back to the thing with Ross McCrorie and having a manager that believes in you. I think he just looks like a different player entirely under Jack Ross. He was a fish out of water sometimes, playing out wide and under Paul Heckingbottom, but he really ran the show on Saturday. Truly stood out.
Absolutely. Listen, a couple of points I want to get the guys' thoughts on. Obviously, we like to talk about, it is a football show. We like to talk about Scottish football. It's our bread and butter. And then we just sneak a wee look down south and across Europe as well, because that's the nature of the game. There's big football to come, obviously, at the weekend, as Hugh teased us with the Hibs Rangers tie, St Mirren against Celtic in midweek. And of course, there's Europa League for 3 teams, Roughie, to look forward to. Motherwell, Aberdeen in the mix, and Rangers, all with games that you would think they will win.
I would like to hope they would win. I'm really excited for them. I hope they can get to the next round. I think it'd be great for Scottish football. It's about time we had more than 2 playing in Europe. Aberdeen, for me, have been the disappointing team in Europe, but just failing at I would say, teams that they should be failing at the latter stages. But Motherwell, no, Tam knows that the Motherwell fans I know they can't go to the games, but the teams like Motherwell need European football. They need to get the crowds back in there and get them supporting the club.
Yeah, okay. Just a couple of quick points here. Down south, the Premier League started with all the fanfare that it usually does. There are some games that I avoided over the weekend. You couldn't have forced me, even at gunpoint, to watch Leicester against West Brom. Even with all the gloss ahead of it, there are certain games that I just think, listen, you can gloss it up all you want. I just wouldn't draw the curtains, as Tommy Docherty once said. And that was certainly one of them. But I settled down with my Liverpool scarf on and enjoyed Liverpool against Leeds Hugh McDonald, because it was like a school team playing against another school team. You attack, we attack. It was mental.
Yeah, it was fantastic stuff. I mean, I'm so glad to see Leeds back in what I call the old First Division. I know it's the Premier League, and because Leeds are a real big club. You know, it's not. You know, you always hear about, this one's a big club. I mean, Leeds at one time in my lifetime would be the biggest club in England in terms of achievement. So I'm glad to see them back, and I'm actually glad to see them back because of the way they play, Peter. I mean, I watched them in the Championship regularly because of Bielsa. And then Bielsa's kind of philosophy about football, but it was a real. We talked about Mickey Mellon earlier on. That was a real Bielsa result. Take all the plaudits, take all the pats in the pack, take all the stuff on Twitter, but don't take any points. He's not a manager. I know he won the Olympic Games with Argentina, but he's not a manager that wins very much. And if you looked at that game on Friday night, you saw why. I mean, what Leeds are doing at 3 each, having just get back into the game. God only, great entertainment, Peter, but you have to have questions about what would they call game management.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have to tell you, one of the goals was just outrageous from Salah, and no surprise, Jurgen Klopp was glowing in his praise of the Egyptian.
Today's a very good example. So yes, he put 3 more goals on his score list, but the performance around was absolutely exceptional in a game like this. And so he deserved the goals today, 100%. Yeah, 2 were penalties. One was a sensational finish. But he deserved these goals because he was constantly present, caused the opponent massive problems, was top in 1-1 situation, played football. So yeah, that was, with all the good performances Mo had for us, obviously, this was for sure one of the better ones. And so he should be proud on it.
Yeah, he should be proud. Absolutely sensational. Okay, one last little point, Roughie. My least favourite player across the entire world plays for Paris Saint-Germain. And of course, he got himself sent off. Now, what I would say, and I'm a huge ambassador for Show Racism the Red Card. If someone, has been shouting racial abuse at the player, that's bang out of order. And I don't think Neymar, despite the fact he's not my favourite player, I don't think he should be subjected to that. The one thing I would say is, he was having a real ding-dong battle non-stop with Gonzalez. I think he was patting him on the back of the head. There was a wee sneaky punch thrown as well. He's not my favourite player, Roughie, to be perfectly honest with you, but he definitely doesn't deserve racial abuse if indeed he did suffer that.
Oh, there's no debating that. You shouldn't be able to get away with that in this day and age. The way we're all keep talking about it all over the world, all the players know exactly the behaviour that they should be doing. But I agree with you as well. He's a wee fly man. He thinks he can get away with wee things that nobody's going to notice. I mean, if he thought the punch in the back of the neck wasn't going to get noticed by anybody, then it's just some of these players are like that. They just think they're untouchable.
Well, I have to say to you, Alison, he's a fabulous player, but he will not be remembered as a world superstar in my book because of some of his antics. I think there are a lot of people that just dislike him.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think he's just got that aspect about his personality, and I think the Glasgow expression there, he's a wee flyman, probably sums it up. He's just the fact that he's always conning and always trying to use these wee streetwise Brazilian antics to get one over on someone. I think he's just he turns people off regardless of the skill quality and the skill set that he has. He turns people off with what his sideshow is.
Yeah, absolutely. And big thanks to Roughie for coming up with one of those classic Glaswegian statements. He's just a wee fly man, and that's our headline, Roughie, for tonight's programme on Neymar. Nevertheless, there's a lot of people, obviously, are giving us their thoughts on Neymar. I can't read half of them out because, listen, he's a footballer. He's got great talent, but he's not my cup of tea, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, the one thing I would say to you is that lots of people are talking to us about the T-shirts and all the stuff that we've promised them. And I'm going to tell you right now, yesterday we were in Edinburgh, Saturday we were out in Glasgow. I thoroughly enjoyed taking the photographs and obviously standing next to our posters, Roughie, because they're getting a great response all across Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and out there it's great, and they're all in good places as well. People. Well, I was in Edinburgh. I don't think people in Edinburgh will miss them. They're there for everybody to see, and it's great. That so people. I mean, I know we need it. You need to advertise and that, but the more and more people that you see who are now listening to the show and watching it is getting bigger and bigger all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the look on Roughie's face when both Roughie and myself were standing at the North Bridge, and I kid you not, Alison, I'm not making this up. Roughie and myself are standing at the North Bridge next to our three posters on the bridge, looking resplendent in the rich colour of the world superstars. And the two of us are standing there waiting to get our photograph taken. And a man dressed as a Cherokee Indian walked past just as we were getting our photograph taken. Roughie, it was a moment it was just priceless. When the guy walked past,
it was fantastic.
The look on our faces was magic.
Yeah, I was just wondering what club he had come out of. Yeah.
He was just,
well, we got him in the photo.
Oh, he's in the photograph. I'm definitely going to use him for it, I have to say, by the way. And I'm sure he was just leaving Buster Brown's, which, for the benefit of few, was an old haunt that I used to frequent in Edinburgh. Anyway, apart from anything else, how can you get your hands on some of the T-shirts and things like that? Well, quite simply like this. Get yourself in front of any of the posters. You can see them in Glasgow and Edinburgh. Send your photograph into us on our Facebook. Of course, you can do it on PLZ Soccer's Facebook, or indeed, you can do it by sending your photograph in, telling us the team you support, to studio@plzsoccer.com as well. You can post it on Twitter, saying you're standing in front of the PLZ Soccer's Football Show poster. And then we will try and contact. What we've got is about 100 lucky people that we're going to highlight, and we're going to get as many prizes out as we possibly can to you. So if you get your photograph taken in front of the posters, then all well and good, and just post them in to us, and we'll send out the prizes to the lucky winners. Every day we're going to get those posters out. And the good news is we've got a great advert coming out. Can't wait for you to see it. And also, as well, we'll give you details of the new T-shirts coming out on our website as we open the shop up, so you can get yourself a T-shirt. Andy Wilson says, how do I get a T-shirt? I'm in Australia, Peter. Well, Andy, hang fire, because over the next couple of days we're going to give you details of our new shop opening up as well, with all the fabulous gear. And thanks to Macron for helping us out with the big new training tops as well. We'll get details of that. And that little ding there is Roughie's wife saying, enough is enough. That's enough. You've said your piece. Don't work any longer, Roughie. Get out here, get your gin and tonic, and just leave the rest of them to chat on the show. So, with that, all I'm going to say to you is the alarm has gone off. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Don't forget, like, share, and follow us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. From Alison McConnell, Hugh McDonald, Roughie's wife, who calls the shots in the house. Thank you to you for watching. Good night.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit Arnold Clark